Hey guys, welcome back to another Mathin' with Coach Lynn. Today, we're going to cover lesson 4-5, the coordinate plane, which begins on page 233. The I can statement states, I can recognize rational numbers and graph them in the coordinate plane. Let's jump down to the learn section. It says the coordinate plane is formed by the intersection of two number lines, or axes, that meet at right angles at their 0 points. The intersection of these number lines separates the coordinate plane into four quadrants. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can use the x coordinates and the y coordinates to identify the quadrant in which a point is located. The axes and the points on the axes, such as -3, 0, and 0, 0.5, are not located in any of the quadrants. Use what you know about the coordinate plane to complete the table. So what we see here is quadrant 1, the x coordinate is positive because in quadrant 1 the x is positive, and the y coordinate, the y, is also positive. In quadrant 2, we see the x coordinate is negative, and the y coordinate is positive. Quadrant 3, the x is negative, and the y is also negative. And in quadrant 4, the x is positive and the y is negative. Now on this table, it says the axis x, the x coordinate is positive, the y coordinate will be 0. So if the point falls on the x axis, the x coordinate will be positive, the y coordinate will be negative. If it falls on the y axis, the x coordinate will be 0 and the y coordinate be positive. And also, if it falls on the x-axis, the x-coordinate can be negative and the y-coordinate will be 0. If it falls on the y-axis, the x-coordinate will be 0 and the y-coordinate can be negative. Now let's look at example 1. Identify the quadrant in which the point -3/4 and 1.5 is located. Well, since the x is negative, we know it's going to be this way, so it's going to be either quadrant 2 or quadrant 3. Our y is 1.5 and it's positive, so since the y is positive, we know it's going to be in quadrant 2. So identify the quadrant in which the point -2.5, -2.5 is located. Well, since the x is negative, we know it's going to be this way. And the y is also negative, so it'll be this way. So this one will be in quadrant 3. Now on example 2, we're going to identify the axis. Identify the axis on which the point 0, 2/5 is located. So we're going to look at the coordinate has the non-zero value. So 2/5 is our non-zero value, so the y coordinate has the non-zero value and x has a 0 value. So this tells us that the point is on the y-axis. Check problem, identify the axis on which the point 0.250 is located. Our x has a non-zero value, our y has a 0 value, which tells us it is located on the x-axis. Now let's learn how to identify ordered pairs on page 235. To identify the ordered pair graphed on the coordinate plane, start at the origin. So the origin is where the two number lines that make up a coordinate plane, the two axes, intersect. So first we're going to move horizontally along the x-axis. We have 1, 2, 3 in the negative direction. So our x coordinate is -3. And then we're going to move in the direction on the y-axis. In this case, we're going to move up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We know that's going up in the positive direction, so the y-coordinate is 4. So the ordered pair for the coordinate that is graphed on this coordinate plane is -3, 4. Now let's identify some ordered pairs in example 3. We're going to identify the ordered pair that names point D. So we're going to start at the origin, and we're going to move over to the right because D is that way. And it looks like every box is a half in this scenario because we have two boxes that get to 1, so we have a half, 1, 1.5. So our x-axis represents 1.5, and then we have 2 boxes down. We know each one represents a half a unit, and it lines up here with our -1, so our y is -1. So the point that is represented on D is 1.5, which could be 1.5, or 1.5 written as a fraction, -1. Now let's identify the pair at point B. So point B is to the left, so we know x is going to be a negative to start out. We have 1, 2, 3 to the left, and each one is a half, so a half, 1, 1.5, so -1.5, and 1, 2 down, each one's a half, and we see it lines up with -1 here, so -1. So B is at point -1.5, -1. We can write it as a decimal as -1.5, -1, or as a fraction at -1.5, -1. Either way is correct. Now let's learn to identify points on a coordinate plane. You can identify a point graphed on the coordinate plane using the x and y coordinates. The x coordinate indicates how far left or right to move from the origin. The y coordinate indicates how far up or down to move from the origin. Identify the point graphed at -2, 4. So since the x coordinate is negative, we know we're going to be moving to the left of 0. It's -2, so we're going to move 2 units to the left, -1, -2, so we're here at -2. Because the y coordinate is positive, we know we're going to move up in the positive direction from 0. And we're going to move 4 units since our y is 4. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So point P is located at -2 and 4, like they asked us to find on the graph. Now let's look at example 4 on page 238. Identify the point located at -2.5. So start at the origin. Because the x coordinate is negative, we know we're going to move 2 units to the left on the x-axis. Well, if we look here, actually every box is a half. So instead of moving 2, we're going to have to move 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the left on the x-axis. And we know each unit is a half, so we're going to move up 1 unit. Because the y is positive, we know we're going to move up. So point R is what is located at -2.5. Now let's look at the check problem. Identify the point located at half, -2. We learned from above that each box represents a unit, which is a half. So since our x is positive, we know we're going to move to the right. So 1 unit to the right will represent our half. Now our y is -2. So our y to be negative, we're going to have to move down. And we're going to have to go down 4 units because it's going to take 4 to get to -2. So -1/2, -1, -1.5, -2. So the point S is represented by 1/2, -2. Now let's take what we've learned so far and apply it when we want to graph ordered pairs. To graph an ordered pair, place a dot at the point that corresponds to the coordinates. You can graph a point on the coordinate plane by using the x and the y coordinates. Graph A, -4, 3. The x coordinate is -4, the y coordinate is 3. Because the x coordinate is negative, we know we're going to move to the left. We're going to move 4 units to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Because the y is positive, we know we're going to move up on the y-axis. We're going to move up 3 units. So 1, 2, 3. So now we're going to place a dot there, and that would represent our coordinate A, which is -4, 3. Now let's look at example 5 on page 240. Graph N, -2.5, -3.5. Well, since our x is negative, we know we're going to go to the left of our origin. We have -1, -2, and -3, so we know it's going to be between -2 and -3. Right here is -2.5, and then I need to go to -3.5 on my y. Since it's negative, I know I'm going to go down from my origin. So -1, -2, -3, and there's -4. Since it's -3.5, it's going to be between those. So it'll be right here on my coordinate plane in quadrant 3 because they're both negative. And that is point N on our graph. Graph M, 4.5, -1 in our check problem. Well, 4.5 is 4.5. It's positive, so we're going to move to the right on the x-axis. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't go all the way to 5, but we can see that each unit is a half a unit. So we're going to go one more for our 4.5. And then -1 is our y. Since it's negative, we will go down on our y-axis. And there's -1. We can go ahead and just line them up. 4.5, -1. And we have graphed point M on our coordinate plane. Since it is a positive negative, we know it is in 1, 2, 3, 4, quadrant 4. Now let's take what we've learned so far about the coordinate plane and apply it to a real-world scenario. The apply problem states the table shows the locations for several different places around the town. The grid shows a map of the town, and each square on the grid represents one city block. Ben needs to go to the dry cleaner, which is 3 blocks west and 5 blocks north of the library. Where on the grid should he go? Well, the library is located at 0, -3/4. So, since the x is a 0 value and the y is a non-zero value, we know this point will fall on the y-axis. So we have 0 for our x and -3/4. So our dot here would represent our library. Now we know, based on our problem, it tells us that each square on the grid represents one city block. So he needs to go 3 blocks to the west. So north, east, southwest, which is going to be to the left. So we need to go 3 to the left. 1, 2, 3. And then it says he needs to go 5 blocks to the north. So north is going to be up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he's going to end up right here to get to where he needs to be at the dry cleaner. So where on the grid should he go? Well, let's look at our x. We have -1/2 here and -1 here. So between each of those points, it would be -3/4. And then our y, we see it lines up directly with 1/2. So the dry cleaner is located at -3/4, 1/2. Let's get some practice in on page 243. Number 1 wants us to identify the quadrant in which each point is located. Well, number 1 is negative 1.5, negative 2 1/4. Since they're negative, negative, we know it's going to be x to the left and y down. So that's going to be quadrant 3. Number 3, 4/5 and 3 3/4. 4/5 is positive, so the x is going to be to the right. 3 3/4, the y is positive, so it's going to be up. So to the right and up puts us in quadrant 1. Number 5, identify the axis on which the point negative 2/3 and 0 is located. Since negative 2/3 is our non-zero value and y is a 0 value, we know this will be on the x-axis. Number 7 wants us to use the coordinate plane to identify the ordered pair that names each point. A, we see that it is 1, 2, 3 points to the left, so we know it's going to be a negative x, and each box represents a half, so we have a half, 1, 1.5, so we know it's negative 1.5 or negative 1.5. And then our y, we go up to a, and it lines up directly with 1, so our y is 1. So point A lies at negative 1.5 or negative 1.5 and 1. Let's look at number 11. Use the coordinate plane to identify the point for each ordered pair. Negative 1, 1.5. So we want to go to negative 1 on our x, and then up to 1.5. And this grid also, each box is a half, so we have half, a whole, and then 1.5. So at negative 1, 1.5 is point x. Finally, on number 13, graph A, half and 1. Since a half is positive, we're going to go to the right on the x. Each box represents a half, so we're going to go just one box to the right. And then we're going to go to 1 on the y, so half, 1. So if we graphed point A, a half and 1, it would be right here on our coordinate plane in quadrant 1. Okay, guys, I hope everything we've done today with coordinate planes helps you as we move forward. We're able to identify our quadrants, identify points, and properly plot them on the coordinate plane. Take what we've learned, move forward, ace your assignments, and have a great day.